Let me know if you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up. Big thumbs up. Big thumbs up. I think we're okay now, guys. All right. Thanks, Sherlock. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm having some difficulty out of this mic, man. And I think it's not the mic, I think it's the connection. So I appreciate it. Thank you guys for letting me know up front. I appreciate that. And thank you guys for being here. Again, let me go back over what I just said. I always get this question of how much Nvidia stock I should own. How much technology in general should I have as a part of my investment portfolio? And so I wanted to do this video to go over my opinion and then get some feedback from you guys in the chat as well. How much do you have and how much should you have? I'm gonna give you my opinion. But also I said first off, I want to give a big shout out to the strike that happened for our dock workers that were on strike trying to get higher pay and all that good stuff. It looks like they actually came up with some type of agreement, and they may be back to work or will be back to work tomorrow morning. Thank goodness, right? So a big shout out to them. Glad they were able to work that thing out. Now it still has to be approved and all that good stuff and voted on. And I think that's going to probably go through, but we'll see. Keep your eye on that if you're interested in what's going on with that. But that's pretty important. So I'm glad everybody can finally see that that doc stuff is like huge, right? If that stuff goes wrong, America has a big issue because almost half of America's supplies or goods and certain goods come in through the East Coast and the Gulf. So those ports are really, really important. So big shout out. Glad they got that taken care of. Thank goodness, right? But I want to talk about, guys, and thanks for the thumbs up. I want to talk about the elephant in the room. What is the elephant in the room? The elephant in the room is always this question I always get, and I never give a really good answer because it depends on a lot of different variables, but I want to kind of attack some of those variables in this quick video. Guys, do me a favor as you come in, hit that thumbs up button for me. If this is your first time here or you haven't subscribed and turned on your notifications, please subscribe to the channel. Please turn on your notifications as well, right? But I want to talk portfolio allocation. The process of dividing your portfolio among different categories of investments or asset classes, right? Having a balanced portfolio based on various things we'll talk about. But it's one of the most significant things that you can do that probably gets the least conversation on these YouTube internet streets, right? So I want to attack the question of how much NVIDIA I should own. As you see, guys, on my screen, I went ahead and shared my screen with you. Looks like we got NVIDIA trading at 122.80, slowly creeping up, right? After it hit a down spout of 115, 116 in the last 5 days. Over the last month, though, it's slowly just plotting its way through to some higher returns. Slowly. It's been pretty stagnant, though, ever since you can go back to, back to June, July, August, September, October, 4 months. It's been kind of sluggish in here, guys. And we've talked about how much demand is out there and all that good stuff. Even a recent article came out today that Jensen Huang said the demand is insane. We'll talk about that too. But point being, it's trading about 122. Now, one of the main reasons I wanted to have this conversation is because I have talked to people, I'm going to say at least a dozen people in the last month. I've literally had conversations with a dozen people who, in my opinion, based on what we talked about, have too much NVIDIA. Too much, in my opinion. All right. And you might say, well, what is too much NVIDIA? It's going to depend on a lot of things, guys. I want to kind of go over some things that I think it depends on. So let me stop sharing my screen. Just wanted to give you a quick shout to where NVIDIA was right there. But let me kind of look, see what we got in the chat. Thank you. Is Mrs. Moore in the house? Mrs. Moore in the house? Mrs. Moore in the house? Is Mrs. Moore in the house? I see Eddie in the house. Guys, where are you from, by the way? Let me know where you're checking in from, by the way. Let's see. You only need 200 to start trading, no doubt. Let me know where you're from. All right. So deciding how much NVIDIA stock or any stock, technology stock, NVIDIA stock to own, it's really going to depend on a few things. First thing it's going to depend on, guys, and I need you guys to really take hold of what I'm saying because I get this in all the time, and it really kind of troubles me that people don't understand how to balance out their portfolio or how to allocate or how to look at specific sectors or what have you. Let's see, we got LA in the house, Eddie. We got Arkansas in the house. Arkansas is here. Shantae, I think that's it. Let's see here. We got Phillies in the house. Cool. Phillies in the house. Good. We got North Carolina. Hope everything's okay with you in North Carolina about those floods that happened recently. Hopefully everybody's safe there where you are. We got Florida in the house. Let's take off that banner there. Give me a second here. All right. We got Florida in the house. We also got Wisconsin. Muhammad's in Wisconsin. Good to have you here. Appreciate you being here. Seattle. We got them all over the country. Love it. Now, usually when I go at 7 p.m. like this, I don't have my a lot of my overseas, my UK and my West Africa, some of my India. A lot of them are not going to be chiming in. I think it's a little early in the morning or almost nighttime for some of those guys. But we got Houston, we got Charlotte, we got the New Jersey's in here. So we got a nice group from all around the country. Fantastic. Connecticut in the house. So the first thing, let me jump into it, guys. The first thing, because I don't want to make it a long video, but the first thing you got to be looking at when you're trying to figure out how much NVIDIA stock that you should have is you got to look at your financial goals, okay? Now, do you have long-term goals? Do you have short-term goals? And this is the boring stuff that a lot of people don't care about, don't want to write down, don't want to think about, but you got to be thinking about it. What are you investing for long-term growth? Are you investing for your retirement? Right? In other words, are you investing to pass this money along down the road in 20, 30, 40, 50 years? Are you investing so that when you retire, you're going to have some money coming back to you? Are you investing just because you want to buy a car in 4 or 5 years, 3 years, 6 years, whatever it could be? But you have to figure out what your goals are. That's going to make a difference on how much NVIDIA you have or how much of your portfolio is going to be taken up by NVIDIA. We know, or we've talked about the fact that NVIDIA has shown some really good, significant long-term growth possibilities because of its position in AI and AI's, demand for AI and demand for data centers and demand for GPUs and everything that NVIDIA does, right? Gaming, right? Whatever you need. The long-term prospects for NVIDIA are solid. So if you're a long-term investor, maybe listen, I don't talk options, puts and calls and things like that really on this channel too much at all. But think about your horizon. Short term, long term. Right? If you're investing for the next 3 months, it's going to be volatile, as we just showed. If you're investing for the next 6 months, you're not going to see the gains you may want to see because of the volatility. Second thing you got to think about when you're talking about how much NVIDIA I should own, how much of a risk do you want to take? Remember, whether it's NVIDIA, whether it's technology, they're volatile. Now, volatile sounds like a buzzword everybody uses in the investment world. It just means it goes up, it goes down. Can go up significantly, can kind of taper off and go down significantly. Right? That's all that volatility means. It's not AT&T. AT&T don't shoot up and shoot down. AT&T is not considered a growth stock like technology stocks are. They are growth stocks, which means they have the potential to outperform the market, outperform the S&P 500, right? If you're more risk averse, you may want to have a smaller portion of your portfolio in single stocks. When I say risk averse, I mean if you don't like risk. Maybe you don't like risk because you're older. You're 55 years old and you want to have access to your money in 4 or 5 years. If that's you, you're probably a little more risk averse. If you're 30 years old and you still don't like to stomach these high volatilities and a lot of risk, you may want to have most of your portfolio not in single stocks like NVIDIA that's going to be fluctuating up and down. That's being risk averse. But if you're okay with risk and you're 30 years old, or you're okay with risk and you're 60 years old, then technology, NVIDIA, you can have maybe sort of a larger portion of your portfolio in something like technology stocks, like NVIDIA, right? Think about your risk tolerance. Also think about diversification. Most experts, most financial people that you run into, they're often going to recommend not putting too much of your portfolio into one stock like NVIDIA. So these people I've had these conversations with over the last month or so, where they have 2 ETFs and one stock. But the one stock of NVIDIA that they have, that's 80% of their money, and these ETFs are like 20% of their money. It's a problem, right? Because they're banking too much on one stock. Now, one rule of thumb, there's many rules of thumb. One is don't have more than 10% of your money, your investment portfolio, in one stock. No more than 10%. So if you own 5 stocks and one ETF, and that one ETF was 50% of your portfolio, and these 5 stocks were 10% of your portfolio each, that's not a bad way to go, right? You have Microsoft, NVIDIA, Home Depot, Costco, and ExxonMobil. Each one of them, 10% of your portfolio. And then you come over here and you have SEHD, or you have VOO. Okay? Now you have a little balance, you have a little diversification. Just a rule of thumb to think about. Diversification is important when we're talking about allocation. So, first thing, long term versus short term. Second thing, risk tolerance. Third thing was diversification. You need to consider whether owning NVIDIA aligns with the rest of your portfolio and gives you some balance. Think about this also when it comes to diversification. Do you already own a whole lot of tech or growth stocks? Let me put it like this. If you own VGT as an ETF, and then you turn around and you also own VOO as an ETF or SCHD, VGT is a tech-heavy ETF. VOO is a fairly tech-heavy S&P 500 ETF because 30 or 40% of it is tech, right? If you own all that, do you still need to go out and get a bunch of other single stocks that are tech? You have to figure that out and think about that, right? If you already own TSM, AMD, and Broadcom, and if you already own all that, do you really need to go out and load up on a bunch of NVIDIA? Something to think about. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but it's something you got to think about, right? And I know there's a lot of people that are in this chat right now that fall victim or fall into this category of owning perhaps too much NVIDIA, right? The other thing you got to think about, and I mentioned it sort of earlier, you got to think about your time horizon, right? Hey, AJ, good to have you here. You got to think about your time. That was weird. That was random, right? I just random say hey to somebody. My fault. But anyway, you got to think about when, not WIN, but WHEN, when. The longer your time horizon before you need this money, the more risk you can typically afford to take. This is why old people or people that are older, they want to take less risk. Because if I pulled up a chart of the of Nvidia, and that's not say Nvidia, if I put up a chart of the market, you're going to see these little chunks of down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up in the short run. But when you look at the chart of the S&P 500 or the stock market in general, over larger chunks, you have an upward trajectory. So think about your investment time rising. The longer your time rising, the more risk you can afford, right? NVIDIA has potential for long-term high returns, but short-term market conditions can affect the short-term performance of NVIDIA, right? Then another thing you got to think about when you're talking about how much NVIDIA stock should I own, should I have in my portfolio? You always want to look at some of the fundamentals, right? Some of the quantitative stuff, the numbers, revenue growth, valuation, right? NVIDIA, we know, has benefited in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years from their dominating GPUs, dominating AI chips, dominating data centers, of course, long term, dominating gaming. But you got to do your analysis, right, on that stuff to see, okay, how comfortable am I based on the numbers? How comfortable am I based on the valuation? So evaluation or valuation. How do you evaluate if the stock is overvalued or fairly priced compared to the company's future growth, right? I can tell you right now, the numbers on NVIDIA look great, right? Forward PE, all that stuff, the numbers look great. Of course, you need to do your own research. But you also got to keep in mind some of the outside factors that could affect NVIDIA's stock price. Another thing you got to think about, I think this is the fifth or sixth thing, but listen, you also have to think about, look, that microphone, have you guys noticed that microphone is restricting me? I can really get loose when I get rid of the microphone. But anyway, think about the idea or the notion when you're thinking about investing in NVIDIA, the idea of dollar cost averaging, right? You may want to consider, instead of throwing big, large chunks at it or trying to time it when it's down to 115 or when it's up to 130, whatever, you may want to just consider buying it over a long period of time with the same amount of dollars stretched out. $25 a week in NVIDIA, done. Easy. $150 a month in NVIDIA, done. Easy. Right? This way, the reason I like dollar cost average so much is because it takes all that guessing out of it, right? It takes out the thought process of you trying to be the next Warren Buffett, the next Michael Jordan. Let it go. It's over. All you got to do is just put a little bit in, put a little bit in, put a little bit in. Don't worry about the stock price. Put a little bit in, right? Put in what you can afford. Instead of saying, so in other words, you flip the question. Instead of saying, how much NVIDIA stock should I have? You say, okay, how much am I actually putting in NVIDIA versus what I'm putting in the other areas in my investment portfolio on a regular basis? How much am is my dollar cost averaging properly spread out? In other words, I've got $100 a week to play with. If I want to end up with a 30-70 split, 30 or 10%, or I'm sorry, 10% of NVIDIA, 90% everything else, then all I got to do is take $10 out of my $100 I have to do and just dollar cost in. And just dollar cost in based on how I balance my investment money, right? Now, another thing you can do to figure out how much NVIDIA stock, because there's no clear answer to this question, guys. There's no cut and dry. Hey, you ought to have 50% of your portfolio. You ought to have 10%. There's no cut and dry answer, right? It's just like this is why it's so difficult to give advice about money on a broad scale like a YouTube channel. It's kind of tough because every scenario doesn't apply to every person, right? I don't envy a guy like Dave Ramsey who comes on to a talk show and answers questions for random people, maybe random. They might be screened and fixed, right? We don't know that, but you're answering questions, but everybody is listening, and everybody's scenario is different, right? So you might be listening to this or watching this on the replay. You might be saying, you know what? Hey, I have $900,000 sitting in a couple of ETFs somewhere, and I've got like $1,000 a week to play with. I don't have to do a lot of balancing out. I got a bunch of stuff already. I'm throwing everything extra at Nvidia, right? That could be your scenario. You could be 25 years old watching this, or you could be 65, and your situation is going to be totally different, right? So one of the things that you might consider to figure out how much Nvidia stock you should own or how much technology you should own is to look at perhaps the potential of talking to someone else about your scenario, right? Something to consider. Run it by like the 12 people that I've talked to that are in 11, 12 that are in this scenario right now owning too much Nvidia. This is not a shameless plug, but the only reason they found that out is because they ran their scenario across someone else, me, right? Now, I'm not, the end all be all, know it all, but I am a different set of eyes on your scenario. I'm not telling you to use me. I'm telling you to find somebody else who you trust and who you think has an idea what they're talking about, and run your scenario by them in terms of your portfolio allocation, in terms of how much Nvidia you have in relation to all your other investments in your portfolio, right? Sometimes, listen, we only know what we don't know. Sometimes we make a mistake when all we do is come up with all the scenarios and situations and the answers in our own brain. Oftentimes, when and people do this with money a lot because people don't like to show their money to other people, right? But when you actually invite somebody else in to say, hey, what do you think about XYZ? Sometimes you get a whole different perspective and it can help you, right? Because I haven't been looking at chat too much at all. I've been kind of rolling. Let's see here. If you got a question, put a Q there. Put a Q there and let me know. Hey, Smart Money Bro, Frank said, I have 51 shares of NVIDIA and 5 shares of Broadcom. I'm not mad at you, but Frank, what does the rest of your portfolio look like? Right? That makes a difference. How old are you when you want the money? Can you stomach the risk? And what's the rest of your portfolio look like besides those 51 shares of NVIDIA? All that matters. All right. Somebody said I have 500 shares of NVIDIA. Cool. Okay. Walamala, what's up to you? Let's see here. I attended an investor conference, and when I asked, they said the true giants haven't even started yet, and the starters now may not be there in the later stages of the race. Okay, so listen, that was for sure. Like, listen, one thing, and I'm gonna piggyback on that statement right there, Walamala. The piggyback is, I want you guys to notice something about NVIDIA. You can go to datarama.com, ROMA.com. Look at what the super investors are investing in. And when I say super investors, I'm talking about all the investors that have over $100 million assets under management. All of them in America, they have to report quarterly. Quarterly is quarterly 3 or 4? Quarterly is 4 times a year. They have to report to the SEC on what's called a 13F. And so we know what the biggest investors are investing in. And when you look at the portfolios of the biggest investors, I need you guys to realize that NVIDIA, that's like number 40 or number 45 or number 50 on the list of stocks that super investors invest in right now. If you can go there while you're watching this, datarama.com, pull up on the very first page, the right-hand side. I should actually just do it. Can I just share my screen? Let me see if I can share my screen. Is that okay? You guys cool with that? Let me know if I can share my screen. You guys, I'll just go there with you. Let me pull up Datarama real quick and just go there and just show you. How about that? All right, let me share my screen with you guys. Give me a second here. Okay. All right, here we are right here. Bam. Let's get that off the screen. Boop. All right, you guys can see me. I'm on Datarama right here. I just pulled it up. So when you look at the super investor portfolio stats, and these are all the super investors from Meridian Contrarian Fund to Alex Ropers to Reapers or Ropers to Nelson Peltz to Carl Icahn. Some of you have heard of some of these guys. To Bill Ackman, he's pretty famous. You've heard of him probably. Warren Buffett is on this list, etc. Okay. AKO Capital, all of them are on this list. When you go over here to the right side, you'll see super investor portfolio stocks. The top 10 stocks that the super investors are investing in have by percentage of their portfolio. Right here, the top 10 most owned stocks: Google, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, Visa, Apple. And I can click on here and show you the top. Give me 1 second here. Top 10 buys last quarter. You don't see NVIDIA anywhere. Top 10 buys the last 2 quarters. You don't see NVIDIA anywhere. If I click on this one, top 10 most owned stocks, let me see if I can get in there real quick. 6%, I'm sorry, 5% or greater holdings near 52-week low. Let me just see. How do I hit that? Let's see here. No, I won't even go in there because here it is right here. There's the arrow right there. Okay. Maybe I can go in here. All right. So here, let's find NVIDIA on here. These are the top stocks that the largest investors in America hold, right? NVIDIA. Maybe you guys can help me. Let me see. Have I passed it yet? Let me just do a control F here. There it is right there. Okay, so here's NVIDIA right here. It's way down on the list, behind S&P Global, behind PayPal, behind Philip Morris, behind FedEx, behind CarMax, behind Capital One, behind American Express, Oracle, Fiserv, Uber Technologies, PepsiCo, Alibaba, Walt Disney. Look, it's way down on the list, right? I just want to show that to you guys because I want you to understand that a lot of the top investors, they're not investing in NVIDIA, right? They're investing in NVIDIA, but it ain't one of their top investments. Let's put it like that, right? So listen, here's the deal. You don't want to have all of your money wrapped up into one stock. Please, please, please be careful about that, right? Please be careful about that. Think about risk management. Think about your timeline. Think about minimizing volatility as much as possible. Obviously, you want to think about maximizing your returns. I get all that. But you got to think about your financial goals. Does it line up with your financial goals? Having this much NVIDIA? If you have 50% of your portfolio in one stock, that's a problem. I can tell you that flat out. It's a problem, right? So please think about the amount of your stock portfolio that you have wrapped up in NVIDIA, right? If we looked at the portfolio of some of those super investors, things are spread out, man. You know, a pie chart of them, things are spread out. So if you're younger, you can afford to take a little risk. If you're a little older, maybe you can't afford to take a little risk, right? All these things matter. All of them, right? You can use, okay, okay. Warren Buffett said, hey, he's telling everybody that when he passes away, here's how I want you to invest my money. 80% index fund that follows the stock market or follows the S&P 500, 20% bonds, 80-20. Some folks like to follow a 60-40 portfolio. right? A balanced 60-40 portfolio. 60% in stocks or some type of equities, ETF stocks, and 40% in fixed income bonds. That's a balanced portfolio as you get older. Nobody talks about bonds nowadays. I get it. But you could really balance your portfolio out with it with a balanced portfolio, 60-40 split. You could do the 80-20 split. 80% in equities, individual stocks, ETFs, what have you, 20% in bonds, right? There's all different types of splits that you can do 90-10, 80-20, 70-30, 60-40. You can have a really, really strong growth portfolio where most of your investment is in growth ETFs or growth stocks, right? 80-20. There's all different ways to do it. It depends on a lot of things based solely on your uniqueness, right? Somebody said zoom in. Man, okay, I'm sorry you couldn't read that, guys. You can go to datarama.com and you can pull it up yourself. It's really simple. Let's see. Somebody said, in which of these three would you recommend to invest on? SCHG, SPLG, or JEPQ? SPLG. Give me a second here. I love a good ETF, S&P 500 ETF, guys. Just so you know, I love a good S&P 500 ETF. I think that if you're a beginning investor, more hands off, that's all you need is one ETF, believe it or not. Really, one ETF is all you need. And S&P 500 ETF. Just my opinion, guys. Sherlock, I appreciate you. Jimbo said I got about 90 shares, bought over 2 years ago. Very happy so far. Jimbo, great. Make sure you have your portfolio spread across. Currently have 305 shares of NVIDIA, said Surfer Boys. Surfer Boy, good, fantastic. Congratulations. Make sure you're spread out and spread across various stocks. Okay. See if I got any more questions here, guys. What do you think about EVGO? I'm starting to see them pop up everywhere in my area. Not sure what EVGO is. Give me a second here. I'll pull it up. EVGO. Oh, the charging stations. Is that what EVGO is? Starting to see them everywhere. I don't know. I'd have to do my research. One thing I don't want to do is just fly off the handle giving advice about a particular stock. I'd have to do my research on that. Let's see. Any more questions here? Any more questions? Okay, so this was my goal. My goal was this, guys. My goal was to say, hey, NVIDIA stock is good, it's solid, great prospects, but don't go overboard with how much you should have in your portfolio. No, 50% of your portfolio should not be NVIDIA. In my opinion, 25% of your portfolio should not be in one stock, right? If you want to go 10%, maybe 15% max, I'm okay with that. I'm a little iffy about that too. I'm closer to saying, okay, 10% at the most that I want to have in one particular stock. That's my opinion, right? Somebody said, what do I think about a cashless society? I'm a cash guy, so I'm not big on a cashless society. When we get to a point where we have a cashless society, your money becomes known to somebody else. See, right now, I could have $75,000 in my wallet or in my house, and you don't even know it. I don't, but you wouldn't know it if I did. But when we become a cashless society, everything you have is going to be tracked by the government. I don't want that. If you was here for my last live, you know I don't like government involvement. Right? As little government as possible is what I like. So let's see here. Somebody says, do you think they will make port workers AI to avoid strikes? I'm not sure what that question means, but I think greater technology is coming to the U.S. ports. I read a story that said the U.S. ports along the eastern seaboard and the Gulf are some of the bottom in terms of technology of all the ports in the world. So I think at some point, there's going to be a change to automation at those ports for sure. And I think AI will be a part of that ultimately down the road. Let's see here. All right, just making sure I don't have any other questions, guys. If I missed a question, go ahead and ask it again as I'm towards the bottom of the towards the bottom of the chat. Just go ahead and ask it again. Do you think we'll need universal basic income at some point? Jimbo, no, no, and no. I don't like universal basic income. Hate it. Don't like it. I'm not a person that thinks that I'm not a person that believes in anything that comes close to socialism or universal anything, to be honest with you. I'm just not into that. I'm much more of a free market person, guys, just so you know. Now, I have different opinions about different things, but I'm definitely a free market person for sure. I believe the market, I don't believe we should bail out this and bail out that. I believe the market should take care of it. Just my old listen. I taught social studies for almost a decade. I've also been a business owner, owning rental properties for 20 plus years. I've also worked for the government for more than 20 years. So everything I'm telling you about what I think is about what I sort of experienced, guys. Let's see here. Hey, Mrs. Moore is in the house. Good to have you, Mrs. Moore. Let's see here. Any more questions? Make sure we're good. Okay. Listen, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I need you to do me a small favor, though. If there's no more questions, if there's a question pop up, I'm going to answer. Do me a favor and share this quick video with someone you know. Someone who may be interested in NVIDIA, investing in NVIDIA, interested in investing in technology stocks, interested in building an investment portfolio, but they're just not sure what to do, how to start, and how to actually allocate stuff, and how much they should have of all these different things, right? For me, I could go on about that. Hey, do you think Palantir could reach the 1K share? The Walla Mala, you know what? I think Palantir has an opportunity to continue to grow, especially Palantir has built such a nice moat around itself, and having the experience of doing government work as opposed to now doing commercial work in some of the surveillance stuff and the software they offer. I think they're a leader in what they do. And as a leader in what they do in an emerging technology, I think that Palantir is well positioned to grow at a solid, good pace over the next several years, right? I think what they offer in terms of software is solid, great reputation, right? And now as they enter into the space where they're going to be offering their services to Walmart, offering their services over to Amazon, offering their services to people outside of governments, I think that Palantir is well positioned to have a run. Maybe a little slow at first. Obviously, it's going to be a little volatile here and there. Obviously, as a technology stock, there's going to be some outside forces that come into play, but I think it's positioned to do well. Check the numbers on Palantir, right? Check their PEs and all that good stuff before you make that decision. Do your own research and pay attention to the upcoming earnings that's coming up. Let's see. Somebody said I had 32 shares of Palantir. Fantastic. Guys, yes, thank you, Ice. Hit the thumbs up button for me. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button for me, guys. Very, very important. All right? If the government uses it, it could be solid. Could be pretty solid. But I'm going to tell you this, though. There's other governments using it, too. There's about 300 governments across is it 200, 270, however many countries it is across the world. There's probably a good 180 countries that could use all the things that Palantir offers in terms of their software, right? Somebody mentioned SoFi. Don't know much about SoFi, unfortunately, right? I have to do my research on SoFi. So listen, I'm going to let you guys go. Appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate the chat. If you're watching this on replay, check the chat. A lot of good information in the chat, a lot of good dialogue. I appreciate you guys for keeping it classy in the chat and also for providing a lot of good, solid information in the chat as well. So I appreciate that more than you know. Thank you, Mrs. Moore. Thank you, SimStar. Thank you, Walla Mala. Thank you, Ice. Thank you, Willie Wilo, Robert. Appreciate you guys being here more than you know. Check out the description box. Got my channel partner Mint Mobile's in there. My channel partner StreamYard is in there as well. Check out those links, guys. Great stuff in there as well. Okay. Nigel's in the house. Thanks. Good to have you, Nigel. Listen, Validated too. The absolute best person who's going to take care of the old you is the young you. Guys, take good care of yourself and take care of other people. Until the next video, peace.